the gist is here. I just want people to get settled in and email us. Think about what you want to see today, and then we do want to set up like one-on-one calls. All you have to do is email us. So I'll give people just like a minute of this. Feel free to mosey around, or maybe just think about. This is pretty open this month. I've got some stuff to show, but also if anyone has questions, we're on my dev box, and I will talk about whatever people want to see. So with that, I'll be back in a minute.
I can't wait for people to watch the recording of this and wonder what the hell we're doing.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm gonna fire up my video, and you guys let me know if that worked.
Yep, looks good. I'm keeping an eye on the chat.
All right, perfect.
We got a perfect comment on the chat.
I forgot to do my 3D animation. I spent a lot of time making that happy duck animate.
I like the chat. Is this when people join the call and wonder if they stumbled into some dodgy bar?
Yeah.
Nice one. Good job.
My intention was to get out here much earlier and play this before the call started, but sometimes
life happens.
Yeah, life happens. But yeah, so seriously, so we're really going to spend some time. If you email us, we will absolutely get back in touch with you. And if you want to, we'd love to have a 30-minute call with you and your team, just to learn, like, are we solving your problems? I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be focused about adaptive cards. It's more like, what are the problems you're having? Why are you even considering adaptive cards, or maybe using adaptive cards? What's missing? Or maybe nothing's missing, but there are things that are difficult. It's important to us, and now is a good time. And I'll kind of explain why that is. But matt.heidinger@microsoft.com. I'll just put my email on there for simplicity, but we'll probably relay amongst the team. But yeah, please get in touch. Oh, yeah, animations. Okay, hang on. Yeah, twirling duck. Yes. Okay. So yeah, like Dana mentioned, this is the developer community call. This is our March 2019 edition. The link to the call, I think most of you have found, but for the recording, it's aka.ms/adaptive cards community call. And we are meeting every month. So the next call will be on Thursday, April 11th. You guys kind of get the gist. We offer hopefully a friendly, intimate setting to meet the product teams. We'd like to show you what's new. And we also, just tell us, ask questions. Rude Q&A is fine too. Just, tell us what you need. I did want to mention, so the Microsoft Build conference is coming up in May. This is what I was alluding to when I said email us now. Build is a super stressful time for ramping up. I thankfully get to defer to my boss for a lot of stuff, but we have a booth set up. There's usually an adaptive cards booth, so we're on the floor engaging with people. Possibly have a session again. We did the last couple of years. So now is a great time to reach us and beat kind of the build rush. You'll certainly get a much quicker response time, and we'd love to hear from you now on the ramp up to that, and also maybe help us inform us what we should talk about at Build, or what you'd like to see. So that's coming up. I'm again Matt Heidinger. David Clow is on the call. He's part of our product team. We kind of help coordinate and put together the content you're looking at. And here's our call agenda. So really, I wanted this one to be, what do you want to see or talk about? I kind of mentioned while the elevator music was playing, this is my dev box. I've got everything from every prototype we were considered over the last 2 years. If there's anything you want to see, I am happy to share it, as long as you realize this isn't shipping stuff, but I'm, really want to create this environment that we're doing our specs in the open. We're doing just everything that, you have a close connection to be able to influence the direction of this product. And if you want to see something or ask something, these calls are a great time to do that.
So Matt, we already have one of those. I think it can be something we follow up with after, but Arturo was wondering if we can share the code that was shown in the last call around the adaptive card from JSON with template data.
Absolutely, yeah. So I have the next slide is a reminder of what we showed last month and where you can get the content of that. So hopefully I'll address that the next call, but if
It's
not,
almost like we paid Arturo to ask that question. That's great.
So yeah, what do you want to see or talk about? Like I mentioned, we'd love to have one-on-one conversations. Just email us. The rest of this will be effectively a quick lap around some future concepts, and I do want to stress the word concepts. We just have a bunch of things we're seeing if it sticks, seeing if it solves problems, or getting feedback. Hey, that concept didn't really solve our problems, so tweaking it. So I'll give you a quick lap around. It's in rough priority order, but your influence will help us adjust.
But I was needed the full conversation.
I think someone needs to, okay. Caught a couple live mic. And then with that, I do have a kind of remote template demo expiration. Again, not a shipping scenario, but just in the interest of sharing something, we can kind of go to that demo. So that's the gist. It's pretty open-ended. You guys you have me for the hour. Oh, weird animation is there. So did you happen to see the data binding preview last month? We built an adaptive card stock bot. I basically built the cards you see here using this new JSON templating language that we're integrating into adaptive cards. So you can go from the samples that we have on adaptivecards.io and then fill them with real data without having to go to code or a crazy SDK and fill it. I will break out of PowerPoint really briefly with two things. So there's two links that are important if you are interested in these, and there are the two right there. So these monthly calls go up on developer.microsoft.com. Simplest way is to just search for Adaptive Cards Community Call. The February call has a link to the stock bot, a link to, this is another key thing we announced last month. You're probably familiar with adaptivecards.io. We also now have a vnext.adaptivecards.io. So vnext will be your place to play around. It'll probably be unstable. It literally deploys multiple times per day. But it's your place to play with this data binding. It's basically a vNext version of our site, a vNext version of the designer. We have full documentation up there, and then here's a recording of the call where you can see me build the bot. The issue that I linked, so this is a really neat feature on GitHub if folks haven't seen it yet. If you go to our GitHub, Microsoft/AdaptiveCards, there's now some pinned issues. So the 1.2 feature list is relevant if we're getting close. I will kind of summarize. We're hoping to release 1.2 within the next month, sometime in April. So here's the feature list. You can get full tracking on 1.2 and that progress. But then there's this preview of data binding and adaptive cards, quote unquote, 2.0. And this is effectively the full spec that we've showed. So summarize, data binding is all about enabling the separation of data from the content in your card. So you can specify the data, let me make this a little bigger. You can specify the data within the card. So I've got employees and it's got me, my manager, my array of peers. And then in the card, I can bind to that data. Most likely, you probably won't have the data in the card. So what Arturo was asking about is an API to pass in. Hang on.
We were seeing. Oh, okay.
Matt, just for you to know, I'm looking at the contact list. It doesn't display currently for me, so I'm not able to mute individual people.
Okay. As a quick reminder of folks on the call, you might join with your mic live. Please mute if possible.
I can help with that also.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Arturo was effectively asking about this new API we're adding in our SDKs. It's, again, not released yet. So this stuff is preview, but this issue talks about how you can get your hands on it. So maybe you've got this employee card template. The data will be provided later, and then you can pass in an object, lazy load an object. In my demo, I build the stock bot. I'm hitting an actual stock API. So we've got designer support. It's got a sample data editor for those of you familiar with Blend and where you had a template and you could provide sample data to give a nice design time experience. We offer that in the designer. It goes into some more issues that I won't really summarize unless people have questions or if they do have questions. But the last month community call goes into most of this in depth. Specifically with that final question though, the stock bot is in our branch, so clone the GitHub repo, and then it's a branch called mahiding/community call 219, and all the code that I demoed, including that API, is there. So hopefully that answers that question. Please do keep them coming. Again, these links will be available, but the quickest way to get it is just go to our GitHub, and it's the pinned issue right at the top. Cool. Wow, I didn't realize all these weird animations were in here. So here's kind of where we're at with some 2.0 explorations. And again, I mentioned it's in rough priority order. So we're right now at the template binding language phase. So we're all about enabling data layout separation, enables you to reuse a lot of these templates, provide server-side data, just kind of makes it a lot easier to go from a card that you've designed, fill it with real data, and then go back to the designer. We have property binding, we have some custom functions you can do, and we have this concept of a $when clause, which really lets you toggle what content shows. So if you want this text block to only show up when a certain condition is met, and in the demo I had, like, you know, if a price property is greater than 30, I maybe want a new text block to show up. You can basically toggle the view of the card. And that's kind of where we're at. Everything there is encompassed in that first issue, all about the template binding language. The rest of this is pretty open. And so the next step, once you have this concept of data layout separation, you really start to get into template composability. So let's say I've written, you know, a really simple template like an address template or a contact card template, that it's a simple, you know, a person profile image with, you know, maybe their name and then their title. And I want to reuse that within a whole bunch of different cards. Maybe I have a calendar card, maybe I have, you know, a meeting request card or whatever. You start to realize once you have these little templates, maybe I can compose them and reuse them in different ways. So we start to get into, there's composability within the cards. So I just want to reuse, maybe I have like a list of contacts. It'd be nice at least to save me some keystrokes to be able to define a template for that item and then reuse it within the same card. But then you get into some really neat things. And adaptive cards, by virtue of being JSON, means everyone can speak them over HTTP without any work. And because they're purely declarative, you start to get in this world where it becomes trivial to make a template registry. And that basically means, so we would effectively have one, maybe at like templates.adaptivecards.io, where let's say someone makes a restaurant template. And all you have to do is provide the data for that template. We can now exchange these templates. I can give you my restaurant template. And because the template is downloaded, just the JSON is downloaded, and the template is being applied client side, there's no privacy implications. You know, I don't have to send any data to my server. You can start doing this you can really start to share not only the card, but a template for the card. It really kind of levels up what we can do with this whole concept of content exchange. The next step from there is remote data loading. So right now we're expecting the data to be either provided within the card itself or within an API. At render time, you saw the C# adaptive card.fromJSON where the data is provided there. But what if you could just say, hey, here's the URL to my data. Could adaptive cards take care of fetching that data, applying the right template, and then rendering it all at once? And that's where I have this concept demo that is going to show the GitHub desktop app hitting an Azure endpoint and then rendering it. And again, it's just a concept, but we'd love to hear, is that relevant to you? Is that too futuristic? That doesn't make much sense. Or is it something that maybe actually would be useful to you? So that's gonna be the main demo. Universal actions is another big topic that comes up. I'd say we think it's a problem, but it's a difficult one to solve. So it's more, we definitely need feedback to know if we solve this, we want to make sure we solve it the right way. But what we mean by universal actions is if we have this world where cards can be exchanged and they can roam, but that card has actions in it. How do I make it so those actions are always actionable? We have obviously the concept of action.submit. That posts back. It assumes there's a channel of some kind. It's either a bot channel or, and it is completely varies what action submit does. So we have this ability of defining kind of a higher level abstraction that makes it so maybe I took a card from Outlook and saved it to OneNote as a completely contrived, not real example. But, I basically moved that card. We can do that today and we can render it today. And that's something that Adaptive Cards makes very easy. But that button, how does it make sure that it can still do something? So we'd love to know if that's a valid scenario, or maybe we're not thinking about it the right way. Maybe there's a different twist on it that feedback there would be crucial. This next section, advanced interactivity, is probably going to be resonate with a lot of you. It's pretty straightforward. For example, refreshing or lazy loading a portion of the card. In Outlook today, you can have a card at the top of your mail that is, approve this expense report. And when you click that button, the card goes gray. It basically is completing an asynchronous operation, submitting back to the server. And then the server responds back with a new card that effectively, says thank you or whatever. It basically refreshes the card. And that's something that Outlook offers today. The bot framework offers a similar mechanism where you can replace a card, but it's not. It's up to each host to kind of do the right thing, and you really have to reload the whole card. You can't just refresh a section of it, or you can't maybe send out a card and you want to lazy load just a section of it. And I'll sort of demo that in this GitHub demo, where you realize you've got this whole card, and similar to single page applications, maybe they're loading at various states. The card kind of is asynchronously populating itself. So that's kind of neat, just adding a little more dynamicism. Another big one is refreshing the card on user input. So for example, cascading dropdowns, or maybe I click on a toggle button and I want a text box to show up, just adding more interactivity. The cascading dropdowns has been a pretty key request. Once I change that first input.choice set, maybe I want to influence or potentially lazy load the subsequent dropdowns or subsequent form. And then there's also requests for input, more advanced input validation. So in 1.2, we are adding basic input validation. So you can say this field is required, you can customize the error message, but you can't do things like regular expressions for email fields. You can't really do more advanced input validation. So we'd love your feedback there. What should we do to make input validation a little better? The next topic is the designer. So a key thing, and was the focus of the January call, a key learning is your company or your product has adopted adaptive cards, but it's not a great experience to tell your users or your developers or whoever you're providing adaptive cards for to go to adaptivecards.io/designer, paste in the JSON, take that JSON, use it somewhere else. Telling someone they have to go to adaptivecards.io, it's just a burden. It's a little bit of friction that's too much. And we heard that pretty consistently. So we released the Adaptive Cards Designer NPM package. Tons of companies have now used that and get validated that without that, they would have had a hard time adopting adaptive cards. They want to be able to build an end-to-end experience. And it was kind of obvious in hindsight. Adaptive cards, the entire value that we add is we will render an adaptive card. We'll make it super simple with all of our SDKs to render an adaptive card inside any app. WinForms, web, server-side HTML, client-side HTML, iOS, Android, like that is our entire value prop. We will embed little snippets of UI in wherever you're at. The designer follows those exact same principles. If you've got an HR portal that maybe wants to edit some adaptive cards, we want that designer to be baked in your portal. AtBot was the demo we showed in January. They have a low-code bot designer portal that integrates with Microsoft Flow and Lewis, and of course, Adaptive Cards is a piece of that. So you can click Edit Card. They collapse the JSON pane. You can drag in, edit the cards, save it, all within their web portal. You don't even know you're necessarily editing an adaptive card. They abstract all that away to make it a very friendly interface for designing the cards. So the designer has been a big part of our offering. And then there's things we should do to it, or people are asking us if we would do to it. So for example, if we have this concept of a template registry, so templates.adaptivecards.io, and I can share things like restaurants and contacts and articles and all the kind of generic consumer-facing stuff. Let's say you roll out adaptive cards in a vertical like finance or health or whatever, and you've got all these templates, a completely different set of templates for, say, patient intake or something about a vertical. You've got a very specific domain-specific template repository. All you have to do is effectively have a REST endpoint with all those JSON templates. They're just JSON templates deployed somewhere, and it'd be pretty neat if the designer integrated with that template directory. So straight from the designer, you could open a sample, open a template, if it could effectively interact with your backend to plug the designer into what you want. So that's a potential area where we're looking into. And then, do you need better VS Code integration with the designer? Right now, is that something you would find useful? It actually would be semi-low-hanging fruit to build an extension that would go into VS Code, but no one's really asked for it. So, like it'd be great. My workflow is kind of frustrating that I even have to go to AdaptiveCards.io for this. Like I'd benefit from being in VS Code. If you just let us know that, it makes it much easier as we're prioritizing, customer requests and seeing, well, that's kind of low-hanging fruit, but no one's asked for it. So, code you write obviously is code you have to kind of maintain forever. So feedback is honestly very critical. We're really trying to be disciplined and not just do a feature because we think it's cool. Thomas, were you adding something?
So someone on the call asked if we could tell them a little more about whether this is kind of like I think he said PNP isn't a plug and play kind of thing when it comes to the designer. I asked for a little bit more clarification, so
Sure.
Maybe they'll chime in.
Yeah, so let's take a quick lap around npm.js. So it is effectively. Please do clarify, but yes, the hope is that
Oh no, sorry. George was asking about patterns and practices because he's a real developer and I'm not.
Okay, so patterns and practices. Can you read just what did it say exactly?
I'm grabbing the comments. Sorry.
Okay.
Keep scrolling up the screen. Because of the comments. Hold on.
By the way, I dug up my old. I don't know if any of you remember?
He's asking. So Matt, he's asking if it's similar to the PMP for cards, like maybe it is to SharePoint.
There it is.
Is what I'm assuming.
Oh, I am not.
Contribution. So maybe if you want him to do more explanation.
Yeah, so I'm not super up to speed on that particular topic. Dana is close knit with Office and David obviously too. We can find the right people. So if you did just want to maybe email that question, if you don't feel like typing up, we can definitely ask that.
Yeah, it's okay. Thanks, George, for clarifying. We'll follow up with you. I'm interested in it, and then we'll just keep going. He said, let's just keep going.
Okay, cool.
And then the other question was around, it's a little off kilter, but around the stuff we showed from Neo Helden with the Flutter renderer and when that's coming. So I don't think we plan to address that today, but if you want to real quick.
Yeah, it's a good question. I did see someone actually comment about a Flutter renderer. Are you planning on using the Flutter renderer? If so, we are still working with Neo Helden. We are still working on the Flutter renderer. They are mainly at the stage of needing testers. We're trying to expand the test audience, so I should have actually mentioned that. If you'd be interested in helping test it, we've got a package ready. We're mainly just kind of validating it, and then hopefully have some announcements in a month or so.
So if you have an interest in the Flutter renderer, then email Matt Heiding or matt.heidinger@microsoft.com, and we'll see what we can do with hooking you up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in it, like that's been kind of the main thing. They are. I should have kind of addressed some of this. So we are still working on the Flutter and the React Native renderers with the community. It's been a pretty exciting involvement, frankly. They're both very remote teams, so it's just been cool kind of working very distributed. They are currently still planning on shipping with 1.2, so it'll have the full 1.2 feature set, and then they are looking to continue maintaining it. Our hope, once they're ready, is to put them as community officially supported renderers on our GitHub right next to our official ones. That the hope is that they will, as we do 1.3 and et cetera, that will make sure these community renderers are a close-knit part of our offering.
Hey Matt, Satish this side. I'm from Accenture, and I just joined like this. I think this is the second session I'm here. I'm just trying to understand what all we can do from this adaptive card, and we are a very huge base for the Teams user. We are trying to explore some option like what we can do and how we can use this adaptive card. I have one use case if I can give you. Is this the right form to explain you if that's helped me?
Yeah, if you're okay sharing it with the group, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So we are trying to we have enabled this for all our users. Currently, we are about 89,000 active users on team. The big challenge which we are facing as of now that we are trying to create some process where when users are creating a team, they need to provide some information, for example, our charge code and all, plus flash some messages related with the GDPR and all those kind of concept. And I don't see that option available by design in the team's creation process or form.
Okay.
So I was reading somewhere and I thought that it maybe if we can create some adaptive card and it will flash after the team creation for all the new team that, hey, this is a form you need to fill out.
Gotcha,
that will help us to address that process. We don't want our user to go some other form and create team, kind of an extra hurdle for them. So is it something possible through this adaptive card option or?
Yeah, I'll try and give you an optimistic answer. So as one thing I'll drag over really quick. So Teams is integrating adaptive cards. So the quick answer is no. Today, I don't believe you can do that.
Okay.
But this is a screenshot of something I was hoping to show soon, where we built this kind of talent. My Teams is integrating adaptive cards into a lot more flows. They have this thing called task modules where you can. They're taking adaptive cards beyond places that are just bots. So that should at least make you optimistic that it's probably on their roadmap and they're getting there. I'm not on the Teams group, so I'd have to put you in touch with that product team.
Yep.
You should definitely feel free to reach out, and we can. They're super quick to respond. We could get you an answer on that pretty quiquely.
That would be great.
Don't know that it's available today, but they are putting adaptive cards in more and more places within Teams. Teams is certainly going to be an extensibility platform, and adaptive cards are a natural fit for a lot of that.
Yeah, that would be great if you can give me some contact whom I can talk and explain. And if required or some more detail, we are more than happy to do that. So.
So just to kind of, oops. Let me drag this guy over. So, I mean, this is where I should find a way to persistently keep this up. Just email matt.heidinger@microsoft.com and we will follow up.
Yeah, that would be good. I'm just checking out. Give me just 1 minute to take that name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll do that.
Matt.
So that was all that I had for the topics. I can definitely do this demo, and I like doing this demo. It's just kind of a concept demo, and it hopefully resonates well with developers. Are there any other questions, Thomas, or any other things people want to see? And feel free to interrupt, chime in. Maybe this will get, if this is something that just seems too far away to really, candid feedback on this would be useful. I want to make sure I'm not just we're investing in something because we think it's neat. I do think it's neat, but we want to make sure that we're focusing on solving your actual problems. So please feel comfortable sharing feedback with me either directly or in this channel. Thomas, were there any calls or chats or anything?
No, I think we addressed all the comments in the chat. One person just so you know did say please, yeah, +1 to VS Code integration, but I think otherwise we've addressed everything.
Great. Yeah, and so that person, thank you for the feedback.
Arturo,
if you were able to set aside 30 minutes so we could really dive in like what you need on that. If that's something you'd be interested in, please reach out to us.
And then Arturo's having a little trouble, it looks like, checking out the .NET stuff for the data binding, and I'm not really sure why, because I can see the branch, so we're gonna have to dig into that after the call.
Okay. Yeah. If there's problems with it, yeah, we can. I'm actually available today too if we need to help out.
Yeah, Arturo, just make sure you email us so we don't lose contact, and then we'll follow up with you one-on-one.
So okay, we're gonna change gears a little bit. Well, really, sort of change gears. So what we showed last month was that we've got this concept of a. Let me just clear this out. Do new card. We've got this concept of you have a card. I can say it's got this property name, and that's Matt. And I can say copy this data to the data structure, and this is a nice way to visualize. And then I can drag this out here. Once I get out of preview mode, drag this out here. It's a text block that's bound to name or root.name, whatever you prefer. Name is just a shortcut. And then I can click preview mode and see that here's the template, the card template, and here's the data, and I can change that to Thomas, and you see that it's live. So that is effectively the data binding that we have today. And what I'm going to show next is taking that to a deeper level. So the quickest way to see it, let's start with this. So some of you may be familiar with the Azure REST API. And this effectively lets me, and it's neat, they have a little test bed, so that I'm literally at it right now. Here's the API they have you hit, management.azure.com/subscription/whatever. And then I am, hopefully that token will expire in 30 minutes. Don't hack my adaptive cards, Azure. So what I did was hit that endpoint, and you get this JSON back, and it's all about the adaptive cards website. So here's some properties. Its state is running. Here are its host names. There's a self link, repository site names. I should have. This is part Dana. This is why I shouldn't do stuff so last minute. I should have picked a different web app because I don't know if there's anything secret in here, but I don't know if there is, and if there is, whatever. Don't be evil. So it's just this huge tons of data, which is amazing, right? Like I can automate a whole bunch of things. REST and the fact that everything speaks JSON has made this concept of just services communicating and automating things super easy. But as a human, to visualize this, it's not maybe the most user-friendly thing. So what I wanted to show is that I can build a Azure Web Apps summary card, and that's effectively what you're seeing here. So it's this, it's an adaptive card that I'll paste into our designer. And it's, here's the URL, here's the status, it's got some links to manage the site, what's the region that the instance is deployed to, and what's the resource group. So it's just a pretty simple view of my Azure instance, in this case, adaptivecards.io. So what I can do is take this data, grab this, copy this guy, and paste it into my sample data editor and hit preview mode. And now you see this card populated with this sample data. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's, a great use case of data binding and what you can do today. And if you're building a bot that connects to Azure, you can do all this with the preview we have. But what about a scenario where I want to embed this card into another app that maybe I don't control? So bear with me a little bit. Definitely ask questions if this doesn't make sense. But hopefully some of you are familiar with the Adaptive Cards desktop app. The GitHub desktop app. It's just a GUI over the Git command line. I'm connected here to my Adaptive Cards repo. It's got the branches you can see I'm in, but it's also got this new tab over here. So this is not in the actual GitHub desktop app. I forked it. This is the kind of neat thing about open source. Their GitHub desktop app is completely open source. So effectively I forked this thing and wanted to add a second tab because I thought it would be kind of neat if I'm working in this repo all day. Maybe Thomas decides to write some code, and of course it's really bad code, so it causes the build to break and the deployment to break. Well, I've got this machine, this app connected to my machine. It could pop a notification. It could give me a CI status. GitHub PRs already integrate with deployment pipeline. You can see like if builds broke in a PR today. It'd be kind of neat if you had that in your desktop app. So what I added was this Azure Deployments tab, and you can almost think of this as a plugin. I don't want GitHub to be tightly coupled to Azure, but I'll kind of get beyond that a little bit. But this is effectively, what if GitHub Desktop offered a plugin model? And so what I'm doing here, assume I've added the Azure plugin to GitHub, and all it has to speak is adaptive cards. The GitHub Desktop app says, I know how to render adaptive cards. I'll hit your plugins feed and then render them. So I click on this tab. It shows null container. That's how you know it's a demo. It's going to fill in. It's actually hitting the endpoint right now, and ideally it'll pull down. If it doesn't, that's okay. There it goes. Look at that. So that's kind of cool. It's showing that here is my service. Here's the URL. It's showing exactly what you saw over there. The state is running. It's got this managed site links. It's my resource group, my region. It's the exact same content that I designed. It's now showing in the GitHub desktop app. I've also got some kind of cool things like here's the most recent deployments. One succeeded, one failed. And then I threw in this kind of contrived version of like, what are the metrics of my site? How is it going? The neat thing about this, there's a whole bunch of things happening, is that all the GitHub desktop app had to do was render adaptive cards. That was really it. This plugin effectively said, hey, I'll go hit all these data endpoints, and then I'll find a template for them and then render it. And so to tease that apart, hopefully the scenario sort of makes sense. Let me kind of tease that apart a little bit. So you've seen that I can build a template. This gets into the whole template composability. This is my template for the web app summary. That's just that top part. But as you see in here, that's only part of the card. It's like the top third. This next section is deployments, and this next section is metrics. So I've got these templates that I want to reuse or compose together. The other one is Azure deployments. You can see I've put in the sample data. Ignore all this syntax. Again, this isn't shipping stuff, which is why we haven't really published this yet. We're mainly trying to see, does the scenario make sense? So some of this, I will fully admit, it works-ish, but some of it is hand-wavy for the concept of, is this something we should do? So what you see, so I've got my little snippets of templates, my summary, my deployments, and then the metrics template. Now I've got this web app full card. So here is that full card. It's an adaptive card that is composing 3 different cards. And what's neat about this, and I kind of typed this text block as a fake thing, there's a new concept element called a data card. So it's just like any other element. I could put a text block here and I could say, you know, here are the recent deployments or whatever. Here, blah, blah, blah. But what's happening as the card is trying to be rendered and it says, here's a data card. Well, where does the data come from? Okay, here's the URL. It's management.azure.com/subscriptions. It's binding to the subscription ID. This is the exact same URL that you see here. So it's basically going to do a GET on this API, which will return this data. So that's phase 1. It has to hit the URL and get the data. Once it has the data, it becomes trivial to apply the adaptive card template that we've seen here. So, right, so we've got the data in here. Could we hit a URL, get the data, and then render it? So it's a 3-step kind of thing. The cool thing about this template URL, if you look at this template, the beauty of it is there's nothing private about this template. If this template were hosted on a website, and it is this web app summary, it's, you know, at templates that are azure.com, you know, it's an adaptive card template. It's just a flat JSON file that has some bindings. So Azure could publish their own template directory for all these Azure things. It's a template over the type of data. GitHub, though, never had to send that data to the server. It's effectively hitting that endpoint as long as I've logged in on the GitHub desktop app so that it can make this request. That's kind of the missing piece that if you really ask questions, I'd have to give a very detailed answer. But the client app has to be authenticated to this URL. But this template URL is perfectly public and private, or public, and that I can share it. So anyone can reuse this web app template, you know, use it however they want. The data never has to leave the device. So this whole concept of client-side templating really enables these public template directories over Azure, over hospitals, over finance. You never have to send the data off the device. You can render this, you know, this card, because it speaks adaptive cards, would render the same in the GitHub desktop app. It could render in github.com. It could render in the GitHub mobile app if they had one. You know, that's kind of the neat thing about shareable templates. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Again, don't look at the specifics on how it was achieved, but this is what we're talking about when we get into that section on template composability via template registry, and then, you know, this whole remote data loading concept. Is that something that's valuable to you? Is there a way we can do this that, you know, we're not even thinking of? You know, where should we take this thing, if anything, would be the really cool thing to know. It's kind of that.
Not that you need an ego boost, but you did have one person say it was brilliant and that they love it.
That's cool. That's good. I wish I had a second to show the, well, I guess we do have a little bit of time. I'll give people a second. I'll try and kind of totally wing this. My favorite part of open a PowerShell window. This may or may not work, to be completely honest, but we'll see if it does. Actually, I don't even know if I can attempt this. Let me see if I've got the hope, the kind of neat, the neat conclusion to all this. Let me see if I can find our demo. Let's see if my AZ web app is logged in. AZ web app. So Azure offers, seems like it's doing something. Azure offers a command line for, it's a simple abstraction over the REST API. So I can say AZ web app list. It's the same thing as hitting web apps list via HTTP. It's just built into your command line, assuming this is working. Seems like it's doing something. And it's basically going to pipe out a whole bunch of JSON. Again, oh wow, an empty array, interesting. Let's do AZ count, set subscription, adaptive cards, and see if that works. Oh, web app list. Oh, bummer. It's failing. The neat thing that you'll just have to kind of trust me, it's sort of working. If this command is working, it would spit a whole bunch of JSON out into the command line. And that's great if you're going to pipe it to something or write some PowerShell or whatever script you like to use to maybe pull out some data that you want to use and then feed it to something else. Obviously, returning JSON is neat, but as like a user, it's maybe not the most friendly thing. So what we wrote is a really little utility where you can basically pipe this to adapt. We wrote a little tool called adapt.exe, and it does the exact same thing. It takes this template and the data that just piped in from the command line, and it actually spits out that card in the command line. It's got a little, ASCII border around it, and it's just a neat little prototype we built for a hackathon. But it takes the concept even one step further, that an adaptive card can be rendered on anything, even a terminal. And because it's got that template, literally I just point it to the template that we hosted, and it can print out this exact thing. So you hit the data and it prints out, here's the URL, here's the state, and kind of a neat showcase that you can put in the GitHub app, you can put it in github.com, and you can put it in the command line.
It's pretty published somewhere, Matt?
No. Well, yes, sorry, it is actually. I think. Let's check. So pretty was our first name for the command line tool. So on GitHub, I think we put it under source/experimental. So
yeah, at one point.
Yeah, source/experimental. Yeah. So this is basically the console render that you just saw. So yeah, oh, that's great. So it shows basically this. It's kind of neat. It prints out a little adaptive card in a terminal, and a nice kind of pretty view. So you can play with this if you do console stuff. I think it gets to kind of the next level when you can say, well, get me a template for that data. Find me a template. I've got data. It's called Azure Web Apps. Can the command line be smart enough to say, oh, okay, this is a Microsoft.web/sites. Can the template directory look up automatically? It's just a URL. Like, is there a template for Microsoft.web/sites? As long as there's a template that matches the data, the command line can do. I just do this command and I say, we called it pretty just because that was neat, but you can start to do kind of some cool stuff. Where you guys come in is we want to know, is it just cool because it's cool and we're devs and we like code, or is it gonna help you do something, like actually achieve something? That's where it makes it much easier for me to tell Thomas, my manager, that we need to do this, we need to get some devs on this, we need to ship this thing. So I'll leave like a minute. Otherwise, I'll kind of give people the time back. I'll ramble for a minute to see if anyone else has any questions on this. Appreciate the time, of course, for you guys. Some of you are in different parts of the world, and I know it's late, and some of you are on the West Coast, and I know it's early. So we do appreciate you coming in. If nothing else, I can just kind of give the time back. And if any of you remember the MS Dev Show, that was a good time.
I like that. Nice product placement, Matt. That's
yes.
Well. your giant bowl of coffee.
Yeah, I know. It is an awkwardly large mug.
Okay, we really do appreciate it, folks. Please, like Matt said, matt.heidinger@microsoft.com or hiding@microsoft.com. We absolutely want to spend the time with you to talk about anything that would be helpful. If it's a team scenario, an Outlook scenario, if it's just you using adaptive cards, or if it's just you ideating, whatever would be helpful to you folks, we'd absolutely love to engage, and we will get back to you and set up time. So just totally DOS Matt's inbox.
Yes. Cool. Thanks, everyone.